The great palace of the Zalari Empire stood like a shining jewel in the middle of the capital city, its walls glittering with crystals that caught the light of twin suns. Inside the palace, silence and order ruled. Every step, every word, every breath of its people followed strict rules. Emotions were seen as weakness, and weakness was not allowed in the empire. Among the many nobles of the palace lived Princess Serenia, daughter of the emperor. She was young, graceful, and trained since childhood to hide every sign of feeling. Her face was always calm, her voice measured, and her heart locked behind walls of discipline. Like all members of the royal family, she was given a small silver pill every morning. This pill kept emotions in control. It dulled fear, it buried love, it erased shame. One morning the princess sat by her tall window, the suns rising behind her. A servant brought her the daily medicine tray. On it lay a shining crystal cup of water and a small pill. It looked the same as always, round and pale. She took it without thought, letting it slide down her throat. She sipped the water, then closed her eyes, but within minutes, she felt strange. Her chest grew warm, her heartbeat quickened. She touched her face and felt heat rising there. The mirror showed a faint color on her cheeks. Something unheard of for a Zalari princess. Her hands shook slightly and she whispered, "What is happening to me?" Before she could call the physician, a horn sounded across the palace halls. Today was an important day. The humans had arrived. The Empire had invited them for peace talks. They were said to be bold, emotional creatures, often mocked by the Empire. To Serenia, they were only stories. Until now, she had never seen one in her life. She dressed in flowing silver robes, her crown placed upon her brow. Servants led her to the great audience chamber. Her father, the emperor, sat upon the throne of crystal and iron. Ministers lined the hall. Guards stood at attention. The great doors opened with a deep echo, and the humans walked in. They were tall, strange, their skin warm in color, their eyes alive with light. They did not walk stiff like the nobles. They moved freely, their faces open, their expressions bold. The princess's heart pounded harder, her cheeks grew hotter. She felt the same warmth rise again. The leader of the humans bowed slightly, not too low, and spoke in a clear voice. "We come in peace, to build friendship." His words were simple, yet filled with something the princess could not name. She lowered her gaze, but the moment her eyes caught his, her face burned red. A murmur ran through the alien court. Whispers filled the hall. The princess is blushing. Impossible. She is losing control. Ministers exchanged sharp looks. The emperor's eyes narrowed. Serenia tried to hide her face behind the silver veil, but the color would not leave. Inside her mind, confusion roared. Why was her body betraying her? Why now? Why in front of humans? She gripped the edge of her robe, trying to steady her breath. But each time the humans spoke, her blush deepened. One of the young human officers at the back noticed. His lips curled into the faintest smile as if he understood. He leaned toward his companion and whispered, "She's reacting to us." Serenia's ears burned. She turned quickly away, but her heart throbbed harder. The emperor's voice thundered over the hall, demanding silence. The meeting continued, yet all eyes kept sliding toward the princess. She could not escape the warmth in her blood. At last the ceremony ended. The humans were led to guest chambers. The princess hurried from the throne room, her hands trembling. Alone in her chamber, she pressed her palms against her burning face. "This cannot be real," she whispered. Never in her life had she lost control like this. The medicine was supposed to protect her, but instead, it betrayed her. The wrong pill. She realized too late. Far across the city, the royal physician was already searching the medicine stores. He would soon uncover a shocking truth. But for now, the princess lay awake, her mind filled with questions. The humans were unlike any beings she had ever seen, and each time she remembered their eyes, her blush returned. Her life of silence and order was cracking, and she could feel something new rising inside her, a forbidden warmth, a dangerous curiosity. And it all began with one wrong pill. The palace did not rest that night. Guards moved along the crystal halls, ministers whispered in secret corners, and the humans, now honored guests, walked freely under heavy watch. But inside her chamber, Princess Serenia sat wide awake, Her face still warm from the meeting, she pressed her hand against her cheek and whispered to herself, "Why does this happen only when I see them?" Morning came, and the council gathered again. This time the princess was ordered to sit beside her father on the high dais. Her blush had been seen by too many eyes. Rumors spread across the court like fire. Some said it was illness, others whispered it was weakness, and a few dared to suggest it was a sign. The great hall filled with nobles in shining robes. The humans entered once more, their steps steady, their expressions unreadable. Serenia tried to hold her breath, tried to empty her mind. But the moment their leader raised his eyes to hers, the warmth flared in her chest. Her face burned crimson, sharper than before. A ripple of shock moved through the chamber. Ministers leaned close to one another, whispering harsh words. The emperor's gaze turned colder than ice. He shifted slightly, his hand clenching the arm of his throne. The princess forced herself to look down, but she felt the weight of every gaze pressing on her. The human leader smiled faintly, as if he knew the secret of her strange reaction. He spoke of peace, of trade, of friendship. His words carried strength, yet his tone was warm. Serenia felt the heat rising higher with each sentence. When he finished, one of the emperor's advisors stood, his voice sharp like a blade. "Our princess suffers from some strange influence," he declared. "Humans bring corruption with them. They should not remain here." The hall erupted in angry voices. Some shouted for the humans to be expelled. Others demanded answers from the physicians. The humans stood calm, but their eyes watched closely, measuring every movement. The emperor raised his hand, silencing the court. His voice rumbled like distant thunder. "The humans are our guests. They will stay until I decide otherwise." He turned his gaze on Serenia, his eyes burning with suspicion. For a heartbeat, she felt smaller than ever before. After the session, the humans were escorted out, but one young officer lingered behind. His eyes caught Serenia's, and again her blush deepened. The officer gave the smallest nod, then followed his people out. The moment was brief, but it left her trembling. Later, the royal physician entered her chamber. He bowed low and presented a report. "Your Highness," he said, his voice uneven, "you did not take the normal pill yesterday. It was replaced by another substance, one not meant for you." Serenia's breath caught. "What substance?" she asked. The physician hesitated, then answered, "It is human-made, an experimental pill, smuggled somehow into our stores." Her mind spun. A human pill given to her. Was it an accident or something more? She remembered the humans' calm stares, the leader's hidden smile, the officer's knowing eyes. Suspicion coiled in her chest like a serpent. "Do they know?" she whispered. "Did they plan this?" The physician lowered his gaze. "I cannot say, but the effect is clear. It has unlocked emotions that should not exist in you. It will not fade soon." Serenia dismissed him, but his words stayed in her mind. She stood by the tall window looking at the human camp below. Their voices drifted up through the night air, filled with laughter, filled with warmth. They were nothing like the cold, perfect nobles of her empire. Each sound made her heart race faster, her face grow hotter. At dinner that night, the tension in the hall was thick. The humans ate with ease, smiling, speaking openly, while the nobles watched with suspicion. Serenia sat in silence, her hands shaking each time her eyes met theirs. Her father's glare burned into her, warning her to keep control. But control was slipping. A laugh from the humans sent a wave of warmth through her chest. A casual smile from their officer made her cheeks flame. She gripped her cup tightly, afraid the whole hall could hear her heart beating. After the meal, as she walked the long corridor back to her chamber, footsteps echoed behind her. She turned sharply and found the same human officer standing there. He bowed his head slightly, his voice quiet but steady. "Princess, do not be afraid," he said. "Your reaction is not weakness, it is truth." Her breath caught. She should have called the guards, she should have ordered him away, but instead she froze, the warmth in her blood stronger than ever. His words felt dangerous, but they also felt like light breaking through darkness. Before she could reply, the sound of approaching guards filled the corridor. The officer stepped back into the shadows and vanished. Serenia stood alone, trembling, her cheeks burning. That night she could not sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw human faces, heard human laughter, felt the officer's words echo inside her. Something powerful was stirring, something her empire would never accept, and deep in her heart, She feared this was only the beginning. The palace felt colder than ever. Ministers whispered behind closed doors, guards doubled their watch, and the emperor himself panned. Proof you are alive. Your people hide their hearts behind walls. But you have been given a gift. The pill only opened what was already inside you. Her pulse raced. You call this a gift, to lose control, to be humiliated before the entire court. He shook his head slowly. No, princess. To feel is to be free. Why do you think humans stand strong against empires like yours? Because we are not afraid of our hearts. His words struck her like lightning. For a moment she saw not an enemy, not a stranger, but a being who carried warmth she had never known. Yet fear clashed with curiosity inside her. Did your people do this to me? She asked, her voice trembling. Was this pill your trick? The officer met her gaze without blinking. Not a trick. A chance. Yes, the pill came from us long ago, created to test the truth of other races. Few have ever dared to use it. But you are different. Her knees weakened. The truth burned hotter than her blush. So you admit it, she whispered. You changed me. He stepped closer, not touching her, but close enough that she felt the warmth of his presence. No, princess. You were always like this. The pill only showed you what was hidden. The question is, what will you do now? Her lips parted, but no words came. Before she could answer, voices rose at the far end of the garden. Guards approaching quickly. The officer slipped back into the shadows, his final whisper hanging in the air. You cannot hide forever. The next morning, the court gathered again. The emperor sat upon his throne, his glare colder than steel. He announced before all, the princess will be examined by our highest council. If she has been corrupted by human influence, she will be removed from duty. Gasps filled the chamber. Serenia stood frozen. Ministers nodded in agreement. Some even smiled, waiting for her fall. But among the humans, their Eater's expression sharpened. He leaned to his officers and murmured something. Serenia's mind raced. Her secret was no longer safe. Soon everyone would know. The wrong pill had become a spark that could ignite war. That night she stared into her mirror, her blush still haunting her. Was it poison or was it salvation? The humans claimed it was freedom. Her father called it weakness. But inside she felt something greater rising, a power her people could not understand. The walls of her life were cracking, and behind them something unstoppable waited to break free. The palace was restless. The council's judgment loomed, and whispers filled every corner of the empire. Some said the princess was cursed. Others said she had betrayed her blood. A few, in secret, wondered if she was touched by something greater, but none dared to speak it aloud. Serenia spent the morning walking the long halls, her mind in turmoil. She had been raised to hide all emotion, to be the perfect image of strength, yet now her body betrayed her every time a human looked her way. And worse, her heart did not hate it. Deep inside, she feared the truth. The warmth made her feel alive. When the council gathered again, the humans were invited to a grand feast. The emperor sat at the head of the table, his voice heavy with warning. Let this be proof of our control, he declared. The empire bows to no one. Serenia sat silently at his side, her eyes lowered. Her pulse quickened when the humans entered. The human leader greeted the court with calm strength. His words were polite, but there was fire behind his eyes. At his side walked the same young officer. His gaze found Serenia across the hall, and once more the color rushed to her cheeks. Ministers gasped softly, exchanging looks. The emperor's hand clenched into a fist on the table. The feast began. Golden platters carried exotic foods. Spar. Cling drinks filled crystal cups. Nobles forced smiles, but tension hung heavy in the air. The humans laughed freely, spoke openly, while the nobles sat stiff and cold. Serenia tried to focus on her plate, but her eyes strayed again and again to the officer. Each time, the warmth in her face grew. Each time, her heart beat faster. One of the nobles suddenly rose, his voice sharp. See how the princess weakens before them. See how their presence corrupts her. This is proof that humans are poison. The hall erupted with murmurs. Some nodded, others whispered agreement. The emperor's eyes turned to his daughter, burning with silent fury. Serenia felt every gaze upon her. Her hand trembled as she set her cup down. For the first time she lifted her head, her voice shaking but firm. "I am not poisoned," she said. "I am not broken." The words shocked the hall. Silence fell. Even her father froze, staring at her. The human leader leaned back in his chair, a faint smile playing at his lips. The officer beside him lowered his eyes, as though proud but cautious. Serenia quickly looked away, ashamed of her boldness, yet unable to deny the fire inside her. That night, unable to sleep, Serenia slipped into the palace gardens again. The air was cool, the fountains whispered softly. And there he was, the human officer, waiting as if he knew she would come. "You should not be here," she whispered. "If anyone finds us." He stepped closer, his voice low. "Let them find us, princess. Let them see the truth. You are not weak because you blush. You are strong because you can feel." Her breath caught. She turned away, hiding her face. "You do not understand. My people will destroy me for this." He shook his head. "No, princess. They will fear you, and that is different." Her heart pounded. The words echoed in her chest. For the first time she wondered, was her blush a curse, or was it power? But before she could answer, torches flared at the edge of the garden. Guards stormed in, their voices sharp. "Seize him." The officer did not move. His eyes stayed on hers, steady and calm. Serenia gasped, "No, do not harm him." The guards hesitated, looking to her, but then the emperor himself stepped from the shadows, his face like stone, his voice a blade. "So it is true, my daughter hides with a human. You shame your bloodline." Serenia's knees shook. Her blush burned brighter than ever, but not from shame, this time from fury. She stood straight, her voice trembling but strong. "Father, you call it shame, but what if it is truth?" The emperor's eyes narrowed. He raised his hand. "Take him away," he ordered. The guard seized the officer, pulling him back. The princess stepped forward, desperation filling her chest. "Please do not." But her voice broke against the stone of her father's will. As the officer was dragged away, he called out, his voice echoing across the garden. "Do not hide, princess. The choice will soon be yours." That night, Serenia stood at her window, tears burning her eyes. Her blush no longer felt like weakness. It felt like fire. And she knew that fire was about to burn through the cold walls of the empire. The arrest of the human officer shook the palace. News spread quickly through the capital. The people whispered that the princess had been caught showing forbidden weakness. Some called for her removal, some demanded punishment for the humans, and others waited silently, fearing what would come next. Inside the council chamber, the emperor's voice thundered. "My daughter has been touched by human corruption. She will face judgment before the High Council, and the humans will be watched closely." His words were law, and yet unease spread through the nobles. They could see the cracks forming in their perfect order. Serenia sat alone in her chamber, her heart heavy. She could still hear the human officer's last words echoing in her ears. "The choice will soon be yours." Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his calm face as the guards dragged him away. The warmth in her chest did not fade. It grew stronger. The next day, the humans stood before the emperor. Their leader spoke firmly. "One of our officers has been taken. We demand his safe return. He has done no wrong." The emperor's eyes burned cold. "Your officer trespassed where he did not belong. He interfered with the princess. He will answer for that crime." The human leader did not bow. His voice hardened. "If harm comes to him, our people will not remain silent." The chamber fell still. The nobles shifted uneasily. They had never seen humans speak with such defiance. The emperor's lips curled into a thin smile. "Then perhaps silence is something you must learn." At those words, Serenia's heart lurched. She wanted to scream, to beg, but she remained silent. Her face burned, her body trembling. For the first time in her life, she hated her own people's coldness. That night, she secretly slipped away from her chambers. Guided by instinct, she found the underground cells where the officer was held. The guards at the door bowed to her, but did not question her presence. She entered the dark corridor, her breath quick, her blush bright against the shadows. There he was, chained but unbroken. His eyes lifted as she stepped into the torchlight, and once more her heart pounded. "Princess," he said softly, "I knew you would come." Her voice shook. They will judge me tomorrow. They say I am weak, that I am corrupted. And you, they will destroy you. He leaned forward. Even in chains, his presence was strong. Do you not see, Princess? This is bigger than us. Your people fear what they cannot control. And the humans, we are not afraid of what you feel. That is why your empire trembles. Tears stung her eyes. She reached out but stopped short of the bars. Tell me, why me? Why was it my pill? Why was I chosen? The officer's gaze held hers. Because you were the one who could carry it. The medicine reveals truth, not all survive it, but you are stronger than they know. Her chest tightened. The words filled her with both fear and fire. She whispered, what if I cannot endure it? He shook his head slowly. You already are, Princess. Look at you. You are no longer silent. You are no longer their cold doll. You are alive. Footsteps echoed from the corridor. She turned quickly, but not before he spoke once more, his voice steady. Whatever happens tomorrow, remember this. Your blush is not shame, it is power. She hurried back to her chambers, her heart in chaos. The council would gather at dawn. The Empire would decide her fate, and perhaps the fate of the humans as well. When the suns rose, the great chamber filled. The Emperor sat high upon his throne. The nobles lined the walls, and the humans stood as witnesses. Serenia walked into the center, her steps trembling but unyielding, every gaze fixed upon her, waiting for her fall. The High Minister raised his voice. Princess Serenia, you are accused of weakness, of corruption, of letting human influence touch your soul. Do you deny it? The hall fell silent. Serenia's pulse thundered in her ears. Her blush burned across her face, and for the first time she did not try to hide it. She lifted her chin, her voice clear. No, I do not deny it. Gasps filled the hall. The Emperor's eyes blazed with fury. The nobles shouted in outrage. The humans stood straighter, their leader's lips curling in a faint smile. The minister struck his staff against the floor. Then you admit your guilt. Serenia's voice rose, louder than she thought possible. I admit I feel. I admit I blush. I admit I am not a hollow statue like you demand. If that is guilt, then I am guilty. The chamber erupted in chaos. Ministers shouted, the Emperor roared, and the humans exchanged sharp glances. Something was breaking, something no one could stop. And deep in her heart, Serenia knew this was only the beginning of a storm that would shake the Empire to its core. The council chamber had not known such chaos in centuries. Ministers shouted over one another. Guards clashed their staffs against the floor, and the Emperor's fury thundered like a storm. Yet in the center stood Princess Serenia, her face glowing red, not with shame but with defiance. The Emperor rose from his throne, his towering figure casting shadows across the hall. His voice cut through the noise. Enough. My daughter has confessed her weakness. She is no longer fit to stand as heir. From this day, she is stripped of her place. Gasps filled the chamber. The words were law. Serenia felt her knees weaken, but something inside her refused to bow. She raised her voice, trembling but strong. Father, you call it weakness, but it is not. You fear what you cannot control. You fear that feelings will break your empire, but I tell you this, feelings will save it. The hall froze. Never before had a princess spoken against the Emperor. The nobles exchanged horrified looks. Some whispered of treason, others of prophecy. The humans, standing at the edge of the chamber, watched closely. Their leader's eyes were sharp, his hands folded calmly. But Serenia could feel it. Every human in the room was waiting for her next move. The Emperor's hand lifted, his voice low with danger. If you stand against me, then you stand against the Empire itself. Serenia's heart raced. Her mind screamed to stay silent, but her soul burned with fire. She took one step forward, her voice breaking but loud. Then so be it. Chaos erupted again. Guards moved to seize her, but the humans stepped forward. For the first time, their leader spoke with iron in his tone. If you harm her, you declare war on us. The chamber fell into stunned silence. The words struck like a weapon. The Emperor turned his glare upon them. You dare threaten the Empire within its own walls. The human leader's face, was calm, but his eyes held unshakable power. Not a threat, Emperor, a promise. Serenia stood frozen, torn between terror and hope. In that moment she understood. The humans had not come as weak supplicants. They had come prepared. They had always been ready for this. That night, locked away in her chamber, Serenia pressed her hands to the cold crystal walls. Her heart throbbed with dread. The humans were risking everything for her. But why? Was it only politics? Or something more? Her thoughts were broken by a whisper through the darkness. She turned sharply and found the human officer standing at the edge of her balcony. Somehow he had escaped his chains. His eyes found hers, steady and unyielding. "Princess," he said softly, "time is running out. Tomorrow the council will demand your exile, and the emperor will move against us. You must choose. Will you stand with them or with us?" Her breath caught. She stepped closer. "If I choose you, I betray my blood. If I choose them, I betray my soul." The officer nodded. "That is the truth. But only one path is yours. The Empire will never allow you to live as you are. They will crush what makes you alive. But with us, you will be free." Her blush burned hotter than ever. She looked into his eyes, and for the first time, she did not look away. "If I choose you," she whispered, "I risk everything." He leaned closer, his voice a whisper that wrapped around her heart. "If you do not choose, you lose everything." Before she could answer, the sound of boots echoed down the hall. Guards approaching quickly, the officer stepped back into the shadows, but not before speaking one last time. "Remember, Princess, your blush is the spark, and sparks can burn empires." The next morning, the council gathered once more. The emperor announced before all, "By decree, Princess Serenia will be removed from succession and sent into exile beyond our borders." The words struck like a blade. The nobles cheered, convinced the order would restore order. But Serenia stood tall, her face burning. She raised her voice, cutting through the roar. "No, I will not go into exile." The hall froze. Silence fell like a weight. Even the emperor stared in shock. "You dare refuse," he growled. Her chest rose and fell, her voice shaking but clear. "Yes, father, I dare. I am no longer your doll. I am no longer your silent heir. I am alive and I will not hide it." The humans moved then, their leader stepping forward. "If she is exiled, we will take her with us, and if you try to stop us, you will learn why humanity cannot be broken." The emperor's face twisted in rage. The air crackled with the promise of war. Serenia stood between them, her heart a storm. Her choice was no longer hidden. It burned in her blush, in her trembling hands, in her voice that refused to bow. The world had shifted. The old order was breaking, and the next step would decide the fate of not just a princess, but the entire galaxy. The chamber shook with tension. On one side, the emperor and his nobles, their faces carved from stone. On the other side, the human envoys, standing calm but unyielding. And between them stood Princess Serenia, her cheeks burning red, her heart racing like a drum. The emperor's voice thundered, "You shame us, daughter. You betray your blood. You stand with outsiders instead of your people." Serenia's voice rose in reply, shaking but strong. "I stand with truth, father. I stand with life. You call feelings weakness, but I call them strength. You hide behind silence, but silence cannot build a future." The nobles gasped. Some shouted for her arrest. Others demanded her execution. The humans shifted closer, their leader raising a hand, his voice calm but dangerous. "If a single hand is raised against her, we will answer in full." For a long moment, silence hung heavy. The emperor's eyes narrowed. His gaze turned to steel. "Then so be it. Let this chamber witness the truth. My daughter is no longer of my blood. She is nothing." The words struck like a blade, but Serenia did not fall. She lifted her head high, her blush brighter than fire. Her voice rang across the chamber. "If you will not claim me as daughter, then I claim myself as something greater. I am not weakness. I am proof that even in this cold empire, a heart still beats." The hall erupted. Nobles cried out in rage. But something else stirred in the crowd. Younger courtiers, younger guards, even a few ministers leaned forward with wide eyes. They had never heard such defiance. They had never seen such courage. The emperor's fury grew. He raised his hand to strike the command for guards to seize her, but before he could speak, the human officer, once imprisoned, now freed, stepped boldly into the chamber, his chains still broken on his wrists. His voice rang out, "No, she belongs not to silence but to the future, and we will stand with her." Gasps filled the room. The guards froze, unsure. The humans closed ranks around Serenia, shielding her. Their leader's voice sharpened like a blade. "Emperor, strike her, and you strike humanity. Strike humanity, and you will discover the fire you fear most." The Emperor's hand trembled with rage, but for the first time, doubt flickered in his eyes. He saw the faces of his own people, whispers spreading, loyalties wavering. He saw that his daughter's blush, once a mark of shame, had become a spark of rebellion. Serenia stepped forward, standing between both sides. Her voice broke the silence. "I am not afraid anymore. If you call me traitor, then I will wear it as crown. If you call me weak, then I will use that weakness as strength. My blush is not my curse, it is my banner." The words struck deep. A roar rose among the younger nobles. Some shouted in support. Guards hesitated. Their discipline cracked under the weight of her fire. The Emperor's lips curled into a snarl, but he saw the tide shifting. To crush his daughter now would mean tearing his empire apart. For the first time he faltered. His silence was heavier than any command. Serenia turned to the humans, her eyes meeting the officers. Her blush deepened, but this time she did not hide it. She reached out, her hand trembling. He stepped forward, took it in his, and for a heartbeat, the entire chamber held its breath. The human leader spoke softly, yet every word carried power. "A bond has been made, and once made, it cannot be undone. From this day, humanity will not walk as subjects, but as equals." The Emperor's jaw clenched. His throne no longer seemed unshakable. His empire no longer seemed eternal. He sank slowly back into his seat, his silence the only sign of defeat. Serenia stood tall, her hand in the officer's, her blush shining like a crown. She turned to the hall, her voice clear. "I am Serenia of the Zalari, but I am also something more. I am proof that hearts cannot be chained, and with this truth, the galaxy will change." The nobles erupted in cries, some furious, some inspired. The humans smiled, standing taller. The chamber, once the seat of cold order, had become the birthplace of something new. That night, as the moons rose over the city, Serenia stood on her balcony, the officer at her side. For the first time in her life, she did not fear her blush. She let it burn freely. She let it shine, and across the empire, whispers grew into voices. Voices grew into movement. The fire had begun, and nothing could stop it. Her father had tried to bury her with silence, but she had answered with flame, and in that flame, the future of two worlds was written.